Welcome to episode 176 of thenecronama.com.
You know that feeling when you're searching for a new horror book, but you're just being stared down by a wall of Stephen King? We're trying to change that. We're Butcher Cabin Books, a new horror-focused bookstore giving shelf space to indie horror writers. Don't worry, we still carry King, but he's quarantined to his own section. Learn more at horrorbookstore.com, where you can buy books online along with merch and mystery boxes. Or you can visit us in person in Louisville, Kentucky, where we're open year-round.
If you're looking to start your own podcast, you should check out Libsyn.com and get up to 2 months of free podcasting service when you use our code NECRO, all caps, NECRO. Libsyn provides you with great customer service and support. They have real-time podcast analytics, free podcast guides and tutorials, and everything else you'll need to get started podcasting today. Go to libsyn.com and enter the promo code NECRO today. And check out thenecronama.com wherever you listen to podcasts. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And the only thing I learned watching this movie was to not take sausage into a wolf den.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast you're listening to. And I was just wondering, it was confirmed that Wolfman has nards, but we never got to see him in this movie.
Nice throwback to the beginning of last month. Jeez. All right, so joining us today, Danger Slater is back. Danger, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Man. Thank you for having me back on. We've been trying to get this together for weeks now.
Forever.
I know.
Well, and you were probably suffering from sleep deprivation from Salt Lake when I made you stay up and talk writing until like 4 a.m. every single day. You know.
It was like a high school sleepover, except we were just talking about writing only. So it's like the most boring high school sleepover ever. Oh yeah, there was definitely pillow fights.
Were there tickle fights?
There were tickle fights. We talked about who boys we had crushes on at the convention.
Spoiler, the answer was always Vincent V. Cava.
Yeah.
But no, really, man. You came out to Salt Lake and we had a great time, and you sold some books, taught some people the true history of the first moon landing. We had a great time. So, I don't know, man. I'm excited that you're back on the show now, because I feel like I spent all my time with you and then you were just gone, and I've been crying ever since.
I know. Well, we were roommates, so we spent almost every hour together.
Absolutely.
But and our tables were right next to each other. We were together the entire time.
And I actually went to my table.
Yeah. Because that was always a rule when we roomed together, was to save water, we would shower together.
Yeah, no, that was James's rule. I just thought it made sense to me.
I thought it was a con rule. I didn't know. So, for anyone who doesn't stalk you constantly like I do, you want to tell our listeners about yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm Danger Slater. I am the Wonderland award-winning Bizarro horror author of I Will Rot Without You and Puppet Skin and He Digs a Hole and a couple other books. And my newest book is called Moonfellows, and it tells the true story of the moon landing, which took place in 1906, which not a lot of people know about. Well, the truest story, let's say.
The truest, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, but Moonfellows is legitimately my favorite thing I've read this year, and people should check it out. So there you go.
Thank you for that. That's amazing.
Because normally I would take shots at you instead. I wouldn't say nice things. So I actually mean it, but.
Until I listen back, and did you say that to literally every guest? Like, wait a minute.
Oh my God, that'd be terrible. They'd all be like, I didn't write Moonfellows. But
well played.
So just in general, I started following you on Twitter a long time ago, and then I got really into your books, and I had just a shit-tastic summer. And Moonfellows cheered me up and gave me escapism. And isn't that what we're really looking for from books a lot of the time, you know? So I highly encourage anybody out there to at least check it out and see how they feel about it. So, because once the check's clear, it doesn't matter. No. I'm kidding.
Wow, you're putting me in a real awkward spot because I don't know how to respond to sincere but I don't even know what the word is. Someone says something nice, so I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not good at compliments either. So we're all.
That's the word, compliments. That's my first one.
But so like you've written several books, like 5, I think, and
I have 5 in print.
I've 5 in print. Okay, yeah. That's a good point. You know, I never think about that with authors when we're all sitting on other stuff or have things coming in 2 years or whatever, you know. But yeah. Anyway, I guess I just want to know, like, how did you get into Bizarro? Like, were you already writing something like that and then you were like, oh shit, this is where I belong? Or like, were you reading a lot and you were like, wow, this speaks to me? Or just like, how did that start? Because that's one of the things I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's it's kind of sort of what you said. I have always been a kind of weird person. I always wrote, and I always wrote weird stuff, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I would send it out and get rejections all over the place because serious literary journals don't want weird shit. And it's definitely horror, my stuff, but it's not like horror in the traditional sense. Like, I'm not really concerned about writing something that's scary unless you're consider like existential decay scary, which I guess people do, but I approach it with humor a lot of the time, and it's just weird shit. So I was looking for other writers and other people who kind of made the things that I was already making, and I stumbled across a writer named Carlton Mellick, who a lot of people call the godfather of bizarro fiction. He's been doing it for 20 years. He's written like 60 books. They're all weird and awesome. And he's one of the people that came up with the term, who said, we're doing a very specific thing with our horror that isn't exactly what the rest of the guys are doing, and we need to give it a new term. And that's what they came up with. And when I found these people, I just kind of sidled up and hung around until they paid attention to me. Like a little leech, almost.
I mean, that's kind of how finding our tribe works, man. So that makes perfect sense to me. I want to go back to something you just said, because I find it kind of fascinating. You said that I don't know exactly what your words were, but basically like the literary people don't consider what you write to be on the same level. And when I look at Moonfellows, man, I'm seeing horror, I'm seeing dread, but I'm seeing Vonnegut. I don't know if that was purposeful, but holy shit, this whole book could have been written by Vonnegut. And
yeah, he's my favorite writer, Kurt Vonnegut. I've read all of his books multiple times. I try to read them every about 10 years or so, kind of to reacquaint myself and see if anything changes. So that is the greatest compliment I could possibly get. I think he is one of the most brilliant writers who knows how to balance a whole bunch of different emotions and juggle a whole bunch of different things and never lose the plot. And that's kind of what I aspire to be.
Well, I think it shines through.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you like weird, get this fucking book, people. And then the only thing I want to add to that is my whole thing, the way I describe my writing to people is I am all about weird fucking situations and then real emotion. And I think that those two things make the things I love the most. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I think that your books constantly hit that. And that's why I'm so in love with them. So there you go. Yeah. 3 compliments in one day. You're going to explode now. You don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm literally sweating in my seat right now. It's horrible.
And you have a beautiful cat.
Yeah. I traumatized him today. This isn't. We're gonna get really off topic now. I brought a dog into my house because I've been dog sitting to try and get money. And I brought a dog into
I've
my
heard of
house
Money.
today who is not into cats, and he kept barking at my cat, and my cat isn't really into dogs, so they didn't really know what to do with each other, and I had to keep them separated, like The Offspring said. And a wise man, the lead man singer from The Offspring, once said, "You keep them separated." But yeah, so my cat's not happy with me. He's been hiding still for hours now. I feel bad.
Oh man. So let's pull it into this film, because I think that this film hits kind of what I was just talking about. Like, Lynch was high known for comedies, and then like he comes out with this, and people were like, "What the fuck?" And yet it lives up, and I think it's hilarious. I don't know about anyone else, but so like, why did you pick this film? That's what I'm trying to say.
I picked this film. Well, you suggested I picked this film.
I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember.
You said,
It's been forever, like we said.
I said whenever I'm on the show, I like to pick films that I know people know. Like, I want to pick a crowd favorite. I want to pick a good movie that people want to listen to an episode about. And you're like, no one's done American Werewolf in London. And I said, oh my God, I love that movie. And then you went, yeah, and it's got the moon in it. And you just wrote a book about the moon. And I said, okay, that might be misleading people, because
sounds like me.
There's no werewolves in the book, but there is a moon. So
there could be werewolves. They don't know until they read it.
Well,
buy the book and find out if there's werewolves.
Several moons, because there's we have our friend who shows us booty a little bit in the movie. So I mean, you got a little bit of that going on. Not just the moon is in space, the celestial body it is, but
there's a lot of butt in this movie.
Got a couple of cheeks showing.
There's werewolf butt and human butt. You kind of get one mid transformation at some point.
It's true.
Do you get one mid transformation? Maybe I just imagined that. Maybe I just wanted furry werewolf butt.
I think there's entire websites devoted to that. Maybe we can get them to sponsor us. I'm on a quest to find sponsors, so I'm just open to anything at this point. But okay, so let me rephrase the question then. What is it about this film you love so much?
I love that it absolutely refuses to pick a lane the entire movie. It doesn't want to be too scary. It doesn't want to be too funny. It has these tonal shifts that happen all the time, and it's almost jarring in a lot of ways. And I kind of love that it's just kind of existing in its own way and isn't really beholden to the tropes or the things you'd expect out of either a horror movie or a comedy.
I love that, because that's one of the things people complain about it. And that's one of the things I like so much about it. Yeah. So I'm happy to hear someone else say it.
Yeah.
Don, what about you? Do the tonal shifts bother you, or do you dig it?
No, it didn't bother me at all. What it did for me, because there are a lot of movies that I can zero in on, and it's like I'm here with you as far as like, this is the direction you're going, this is the vibe that you have, this is the tone that you're setting. I'm like, all right, you've already set the plate, and this is the way we're going with this entire film. And then you have movies that they make a completely different direction from where you were planning, and it screws it up. This one is clear from the beginning. You're like, all right, it's a horror, it's a comedy, it's a little schlocky thing, it's goofy, So you never get enough time invested to where you kind of like, you set me up for a horror movie, and here I am with a rom-com.
Right.
You don't get that moment. So I think because there is not this long laying out the tracks of what the movie's supposed to be, you don't have that. I mean, even with the abrupt ending, you're kind of like, or even as James pointed out from one of my tweets or replies to a tweet that he made about the dedication of the film.
Oh,
I mean, I guess not the dedication.
Do you have it up? Can you read it?
The acknowledgement of let me pull it up. But the acknowledgement of Princess or Lady Diana and Prince Charles's wedding, after they had basically used a very disparaging term for Prince Charles at one point of the movie. And something told me, because I have not seen this movie in, I can't even tell you how long, but something told me, watch through the credits. Just keep watching through the credits. There's something there. And lo and behold, at near the end of the credits, it says, Lycanthrope Films limited wishes to extend its heartfelt congratulations to Lady Diana Spencer and His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, on the occasion of their marriage, July 29th, 1981. Which, again, flies in the face of some stuff they had done. Queen Elizabeth is a man. Prince Charles is a blah, blah. And,
the other F-bomb.
Yeah. And Winston Churchill, I forgot what they said, just like a meat and suit or something. I forgot what he said, but he made disparaging remarks about three somewhat popular people in British history at that point. And it was hilarious to me that I mean, not the term that was used, but it was hilarious that was what he did at one point, or at least was drawing up in one point in this film, to have your lead character get arrested or try to get arrested by the bobbies. Like, I'm telling you, I'm crazy. I just killed a bunch of people. You're not going to arrest me. All right, I'll say some really disparaging things about the Queen and other people, and then maybe I'll get your attention. Which it seems as though that got the attention.
Yeah, it worked.
The thing I love about that is that's such an American thing to do. These are the only things I know about your country, so I'm going to insult them. It just works perfectly to me.
I do have a bit of news. I guess maybe the two of you knew this already, but it's proposed that they're doing a reboot of American Werewolf in London. Okay, but it's going to be a girlfriend-boyfriend situation, as far as those two are backpacking in Europe, and the girlfriend gets bitten as opposed to two friends going. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do, since we're getting a lot of reboots and adaptations to classic films and cult films, exactly where this is going to go.
I don't think that's a terrible idea. I think what they would do with a reboot is kind of lean into the kind of like political stuff that they only touched on a lot of stuff in this movie. They didn't really get too deep into any ideas or ideologies or anything like that. And especially with modern audiences, I feel like if you're going to reboot this movie, it's going to be all like allegorical for whatever, Boorish Americans or, imperialism or whatever kind of point the movie's going to want to make about being a foreign American in another land, or a foreign someone in this land, or however they want to play it.
Right.
It could be interesting. I mean, there's no reason to just like not do something different and not call it the same movie as the one that already exists. But,
what if we cast Boris? We cast Boris and we do a British werewolf in America. I think he'd be a beautiful werewolf.
Are you trying to get me to do an impression of a British werewolf in America?
No, I'm not.
Oh, hey. Excuse me, pardon me. Excuse me. I have to transform right now. Excuse me, pardon me. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me.
You're gonna get hate mail from John Moore.
It's so hot in here.
I want a Canadian werewolf in America.
That'd be pretty sweet. Just apologizing all the time, but people keep shooting it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. No, Don, I don't know how this is going to work into the conversation anywhere else. So did you find anything else weird in the credits before we get back to the movie?
Oh, are you talking about... Well, I was going to mention it in the film recommendations, but are you referring to the Muppets?
I am, yes.
Okay. I love the Muppets. Like, I've seen every movie except for the Christmas one. And yes, I have seen the Muppets in Space with the cameo with Hulk Hogan, the NWO version of Hulk Hogan.
That's my favorite because I'm a big Pepe fan. Yeah.
But I always find it funny when the Muppets appear in something non-Muppet. So whether it's, they're doing a cameo or they happen to be on a TV show or whatever. Because it's just funny to me to see them in the credits. Kermit the Frog as himself, Miss Piggy as her. It's just something I've always found funny since I was a kid. It's kind of like almost, I guess, what would be the reverse of breaking the fourth? The kayfabe, I guess, within wrestling. The whole idea that it's running with the joke that these are real things. We're going to jokingly pretend that these are actually real things and not, a puppet or, excuse me, a Muppet that someone is maneuvering and voicing. But I always find it funny. But then again, I mean, you got a lot of puppetry that's going on in here even in the beginning of the movie, where you've got the British pub goers that completely manipulate these two young, well, I guess not necessarily manipulate, but manipulate the story around what happens to them. Whereas, it was just some lunatic who did it. And they don't want to come forward and let anybody know, hey, we've got a fucking werewolf out here. You might want to be mindful of this.
Yeah, that pub scene in particular, I haven't seen this movie in a long time either. This is something I used to watch over and over again when I was getting into horror in my early 20s, late teens. And not that I wasn't smart back then, but I don't think I watched movies as critically as I do now. So there's a lot of stuff that I was picking up on that I completely missed. And one of the things is in that pub scene, one of the English guys tells this extended joke about the UN delegates on an airplane, right, and how the plane's going to crash because it's too heavy. So all these people from other countries are self-sacrificing themselves. The French guy says, "Vive la France," and jumps out the plane. The British guy says, "God save the Queen," and jumps out the plane. And then the American guy says, "Remember the Alamo," and throws the Mexican guy out of the plane. And, the whole crowd, the pub is laughing. But for me, that's kind of like the thesis of this movie. The main character, what's his name?
David.
David, yeah. He has to learn, or part of one of the things he's trying to learn is, and his friend is trying to convince him to self-sacrifice. To get himself to be, because that's the only way he can save, these people from being undead and walking in limbo, the people that he's killed and taken out. So, the first time I watched this movie, I'm thinking, oh, this is just a joke to, make everything uncomfortable in this bar, because the second they turn, he goes, well, what's that star on the wall for? And they all turn on them, in the middle of the laughter, everyone stops laughing. But it's kind of bigger than that. It also, now that I'm thinking about it, the British guys immediately go and then throw them out of the bar after that. So they're kind of doing the exact thing that they were making fun of the Americans for doing. So they're not any better than us. I think, I'm thinking about it. It's kind of like everybody's terrible like that. Every kind of, if you're nationalistic, maybe.
Look, they're literally throwing him to the wolves.
Yeah, there you go.
Or the werewolf. Now, a historical note, because I didn't know this until I was in college, and this one professor told me about it. During the period in which Texas was an independent republic, I know there are people in Texas who will still argue that it is one to this day, which it is not. During the period in which it was its own republic, it actually had embassies, as you would. It had embassies in different countries, and one of the embassies was in London. Not too far from where the chaos ensues in Piccadilly Circus, or at least where the scene is supposed to be, because they filmed it elsewhere. But the embassy was there up until probably maybe 10 years ago. But it was not an active embassy for the Republic of Texas. What they did is they turned it into a pub. And it was an active pub that was Tex-Mex style or themed up until, the early 2000s. And I took a picture of it. I didn't really feel like going in because I was like, I'm just gonna. This is the American stuff I'm gonna see while I'm over here. I've got to go do research. I've got to go to the archives and bust my butt and pretend as though I'm doing some serious work while I'm here. I can't do too many fun things. But no, it was a bar, and it might still be in existence today. But last time I went, that whole area, I guess, was being renovated. I can't imagine that they would have gutted it or taken, the stuff off the wall. But yeah, that joke, because initially when I heard it, at least as an adult, when I initially heard it, I was kind of like, I don't know if this would age well.
Yeah.
But then I also think that's not necessarily how the Alamo, how it worked. Because one, the movie was all wrong, because when they referenced John Wayne and everybody else who was in it, it was like, that's not what happened. They didn't fight to the last man. You had people who were giving up, and you had people who were dying in bed in a bed with tuberculosis or typhoid or whatever was going on. Not to mention the motivations for those Texans. But beyond that, you also have that understanding in parts of Europe that's what America is like. America is fucking Texas. It's that you got cowboy. America is L.A., New York, or Texas. There is nothing else unless someone really knows something about America, because the way our culture kind of just would go around the world. That was what was understood. Even so much, I think even my daughter has had some questions about whether or not I've ever had a horse or if I've ridden on a horse, because that's something that's kind of expected. And like, yeah, but I was like thinking like, that's a weird thing to ask. But I was like, oh shit, I have ridden on horses before. And then she asked me the question of, why haven't I ridden on one? I was like, we don't have any fucking horses. What do you want me to do?
Come visit me. They're everywhere.
No, not horses' asses, like the one that's running for your governor.
But no, I was out, so I'll cut this later. But I'm assuming you guys were talking about the Alamo joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because it's kind of the mirror of him. Like it's the things they know about his country,
Right.
I thought that was fun. I don't know if you guys said that, but
well,
just throwing that out there.
Well, it even goes back to
my internet connection will last.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, James, about when David has that big moment of like, he realizes he's been up to some shit and he needs to be stopped, where he just says some outlandish shit about the British, like, oh, this will really piss them off, but this is the only thing I know about them. Or at least these are the things I know that will get them going. Meanwhile, I'm looking at this from a 2022 perspective. I'm like, there are a lot of things I could say that could really get British people upset.
Yeah.
Like,
please don't.
It's never coming home, boys. It's never coming home. I mean, with this being a World Cup year, I can definitely say it's never coming home, and they will all get upset that they won't get the cup.
Good Lord. What were you going to say, Danger?
I would just like, the whole movie is very much, it's not set up to be like, this is the problems with American culture, or this is the problems with British culture. Yeah. It's kind of like we both are really flawed and we can't see it in each other.
Mm.
So like, it's almost this kind of like miscommunication that's happening throughout the movie. Except for him and his little romance that he has.
Well, even her, I would argue it's there too, because I think it kind of permeates. Like, I see this ongoing theme of thinking you understand someone when you don't, or like thinking you have enough info about somebody. Like, nobody wants to listen to him. Nobody wants to like actually think about what he's saying because it sounds ridiculous. So she thinks she knows what's best for him. She thinks he's over it and, like, yo, you're out of the hospital now. We'll just move past that. You're hot. Let's have sex. Like, she's not actually listening to him. So I think it kind of still pulls in.
Wait, since you mentioned that, I do have to point this out. How open she was with a film from 1981. How open she is at the beginning of, I want to let you know, I've had 7 lovers, 3 of which were one-night stands. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how fucking progressive that is Like you've just met this guy, you're somewhat attracted to him, you're going to take him home with you, and it's kind of like, hey, just letting you know this is on the table, but I've been with 7 people before. Almost as a thing of like, this is she kind of delivers it out of shame of like, yeah, I want you to know I've been with 7 guys. If that's a problem, I'm sorry. That's just how things happen. But I love how he's so horned up he doesn't care. he's not one of these stupid guys who's like, oh my God, you've had sex with 2 people? That's too much. Wow. That must be how your parents raised you. What is wrong with you? As opposed to, thanks for being open with me. That's cool. Yeah. Of course, he doesn't say how many he's had sex with, though.
It does seem a little much for I wouldn't even call it a first date, a pre-first date.
Right.
But she's getting her cards on the table. I mean, I can appreciate that. I personally keep all my lovers' names on a piece of paper that I carry with me, and then I hand it to any prospective sex partner, and it's got their numbers and reviews of my penis, and she could just look it up and double check, cross reference if she needs. And I said, oh, you know what, we'll meet up in like 2 or 3 weeks when you're done with the list, and we'll see. We'll go from there. Because I'm a modern
stars. Man. Yeah. It's a whole new use for the 5-star system right there.
Yeah, that's Yelp reviews right there.
My penis is Michelin rated. Thank you. She pretty much oversteps her bounds as a nurse by inviting this American boy whose friend was murdered, and he was savagely, if not attacked by a werewolf, at least attacked to the point of being in the hospital for nearly a month. And she immediately just brings him home. Like they're having sex immediately. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the rules are in hospitals, but let's say that was a teacher and that was a student. There'd be problems.
In colleges, you're supposed to wait till the end of the semester, but outside of that, I don't know.
Oh, so that was kind of like the end of the semester for them.
Well, he had been discharged. Insert joke here.
Wow. The thing I found most interesting about that, though, like, yeah, all of that was weird to me, and it was definitely a, like, should you be doing this kind of thing? But I thought it was amazing how everyone just accepted it. Like, when she's at work, and they're like, have you seen him since he left? And she's like, yeah, he's staying in my flat. Nobody's like, oh my God, you can't do that. Or, oh, you slut or anything else. They're just like, oh, okay, cool. You know, I thought that was so interesting. Like, I don't know. I don't think that would happen in a movie today. I think we'd milk that scene until it was really gross and terrible. How dare you? Yeah.
I think we would also have a scene where she would walk in on him mid-transformation.
Yeah, she never sees it happen. That's true.
But strangely, she knows it's him.
We don't get as many transformations as this as you'd think, right? As far as I remember, there's only 2. There's the big one, and then the one at the end.
Mm-hmm. And I was reading that the transformation that they had, I don't know if this was a budgetary issue or creative thing or whatever, as far as like why they didn't do it more. But that one transition, it was a 6-day shoot.
Wow.
From doing everything and doing the makeup and getting the positioning of the cameras and shooting it and reshooting it. And then when Griffin Dunn's character gets attacked by the werewolf in the beginning, or the other werewolf, apparently that was the only version of the werewolf head that they had. So when he's fighting off the werewolf or trying to fight off the werewolf, he was given instructions like, don't fight too hard because you can't break this thing. It's the only one we have.
That's so awesome. Funny. That's funny because that first werewolf attack, the one that Griffin Dunn gets killed in, is like probably the worst effect in the whole movie. And now I know why. Because they were like, please don't ruin our props. We need them for a big expensive shoot scene later.
That's pretty great, actually. I did not read that, but I love that, and it makes a lot of sense to me. You guys have both watched more werewolf movies than this. Mm-hmm. Is this the greatest transformation in cinema? werewolf transformation.
It's definitely better than that Benicio del Toro one. Because it seemed Danger, did you see that one?
No.
Okay. I saw it once. I left the movie theater fucking confused. You talk about tone as far as we're going in one direction with a film. It seemed as though when they made that film, I can't remember what it's called, The Wolfman or whatever. I don't care anymore. It was such a bad movie. But I think they didn't know what kind of movie they wanted to make. It just seems like they wanted to make kind of a romantic love story, Nicholas Sparks type movie, but we're going to have a Wolfman in it. But then we're also going to put it in like the 19th century or early 20th century. I can't remember if they were even consistent with the timeline that they were working with. But the transformation in that film, it just looked comical. Whereas this one, because it's the visual effects and its prosthetics and its makeup, it's a lot more believable. I mean, it's definitely aged because we're talking about 40 years from now or 41 years ago.
Yeah.
But it looks exactly like you would expect a wolf man or werewolf transformation to take place because it looks and sounds painful.
Yep.
That is why I think this is the best one personally, because it does have this it feels very visceral. Like you can feel when his hand is stretching and it's just in front of his face and he's screaming, like you could just picture all your own fingers breaking.
Yes.
There's the only other one I would put on a par with this is the one from The Howling, which I was told is it's longer, the one in The Howling, and I was told that it's because they shot an effects reel and that's how they got the money to shoot The Howling, is by showing this werewolf effect. And then the thing that the producer said is, we will give you the money to make this movie if you keep the entire effect reel in the movie. So they used every single shot that they used to test all the makeup out and to test all the effects out. And it's so they put this long transformation scene in. So you get a lot more of it, but I feel like this one is a lot punchier and a lot more painful.
Yeah, no, this one, I describe it as you feel it, not see it. Like, that's so rare in film. And I truly, like, even now, no matter how many times I've seen it, I react every time as his fingers are stretching and shit. Like, it still gets to me.
And it comes out of nowhere. That's like one of my favorite parts of it too. And that kind of goes back to how the movie's refusing to kind of pick a tone in a lot of ways, because we have these scenes of romance where he's with this lady and it's been Nurse Price, and it's been going on for 30 minutes and they've developed this relationship and everything's good. Something's coming though, and he's sitting around bored in the apartment because she finally had to go back to work. And he's just reading a magazine, and all of a sudden he just goes, "Oh God!" screams and falls over, and then just has the most horrific transformation you could possibly imagine. It just comes almost out of nowhere. I think like, Blue Moon was playing like during it. So it's like this like soft croonery song, and then he's just screaming, and his fingers are turning backwards, and his legs are snapping, and hair's sprouting out of every part of his body.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I had this weird experience with the transformation this time. Before I rewatched the film, I pulled up the transformation and only watched that. And watching it that out of context almost made it kind of funny. Like, it didn't have the same feel to me because I wasn't sucked in, right? And I was watching it and I was like, this is still really good, but I don't feel what I normally feel. And then I watched the movie. And when it hit the transformation that I had literally just fucking watched, it felt totally different. And I think a lot of that is this buildup of the dread of what's coming or not coming. Am I crazy? Am I not crazy? Like, which one's worse? And just him fucking pacing back and forth. And like, even like when he locks himself out of the apartment and crawls through the window, like this whole stretch before it hits, I think really adds to the transformation itself. And so then I was thinking about other transformations I like. And in Van Helsing, the transformations look really fucking cool, but they're kind of fast. And you get like this, like, there's a couple different ones where he doesn't want to transform and then he does. And like, you get like this like crazy thing going on that's really cool and it looks great, but it's all CGI and it's all fast. And really paying attention to the speed they did this with, I was like, that's so much better. Like that totally hooked me and just ripped me apart again, even when I had just watched it out of context. And I thought that was crazy.
Those are probably,
or am I crazy?
those are probably the comedy chops coming in from Landis, though. Even though none of this is comedy, but like knowing timing and pacing, and building up and payoff is kind of what makes jokes work.
Yes.
So like, he knows, he's like, I gotta have this scene go on where this guy's in this apartment by himself. And he's got to be doing all these things, and it's got to last this long so that when we get to this transformation, it's going to hit you like a fist because you either got lulled into, the kind of whatever he was doing, or the anticipation is built so much that it's like just erupting.
Absolutely. And then for some reason he wakes up naked in the zoo. Very odd.
Who among us hasn't been there, though?
I didn't know that he was actually in there with real wolves. I was like, well, that seems very dangerous and really naked.
Dude, I turned to my girlfriend. I was watching this with my girlfriend. I was like, I would quit the film right here. I am not getting naked in a cage with wolves. Like, maybe with clothes on. Maybe. And I'd be naked in a cage with no wolves. But the two of them together, no. There's too much,
very crazy.
Too much stuff dangling that might look like a snack to it.
This is how you get those stories of things that went really wrong on a film. Was this film cursed, or were they idiots for putting an actor in with live wolves?
I mean. Not to bring us down, but Jonathan Landis doesn't have the best track record when it comes to film safety on the set. So, yeah.
I hear Max doesn't have safety either. You know what? Never mind. Anyway, but no, man, I was so stunned to like find out he was really in there with the wolves. I was like, Jesus, that seems like a terrible plan. I don't know.
Not if you're a wolf.
True. But I think the best part of the thing I was reading, they were like, but it was fine because they just fed the wolves. And I was like, that was your justification? No, that's not good enough.
They fed him a PA's penis like 20 minutes earlier. It's fine. He won't eat the actors' penis, not the A-listers.
Look, if wolves are anything like humans, they would have eaten and then said, like, you know what? I could go for a little something extra after this.
It's a buffet.
Now, I do have to mention, because I think I put this in my notes about the whole creepiness of the zoo. With him being in a bush, talking to a child, asking for balloons. And I'm just thinking, like, this is just bad. I mean, but it's bad as far as because it's making you squirm. It's a little awkward. And you kind of question, like, what the hell would I do if I were in the same situation? And I definitely would steal somebody's clothes or try to steal someone's clothes. But I'm not going to be calling over to a little child for his balloons.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's the one you don't ask? But I just don't understand why you would even think, oh, balloons. That's what I should get.
One pops, you got another one to take its place, I think. Maybe.
Oh, man.
I don't.
I will say the line, "A naked American man stole my balloon," is my favorite line in this whole thing. So, just great. But I still don't know why he's in the fucking wolf cage, but whatever. We'll move on.
James, he was with his pack.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. James, I want to talk about something you said to me on Twitter like 2 days ago. You said that there was some sort of anti-Semitism, like kind of reading you can do of this movie.
Okay, so I had this professor in college in one of our like lit crit classes, and he would talk about films as well. And his whole thing was about how this movie is about being Jewish in America as well, because you're constantly othered, and you're always in a foreign land in that nobody truly understands what it's like to be you. And he would always talk about how, like, the Nazi dream, the Nazi beasts coming in and slaughtering the family, and how Landis is Jewish. And apparently Landis wrote this in the 60s, which wasn't actually that far after the Holocaust, you know? And so he thought it was a lot of like possible survivor's guilt, even though you're not necessarily like in a concentration camp, like you missed all that and you weren't killed, and just how David exemplifies that, because he has survivor's guilt with Jack's death and then constantly being haunted by it. And I don't know, but like, he did such a better job of explaining it than I am, but he did it in such a way that I constantly notice it now. Like, I always see oh, he's Jewish, I checked, and Jack asking about the star on the wall and pointing out that it's a 5-pointed star, and just these other little things like that.
It all of this went over my head, but it does make a lot of sense what you're saying. I mean, there is, yes, there's that sequence when those Nazi monsters blow his whole family away. They just burst in, the Gestapo or whatever. But like, I just thought it was just a horrific thing. Like, oh, what's the most horrific thing that someone could be dreaming about? Not only are they Nazis blowing your family away, they're also monsters. But I didn't really put together like that he was even Jewish himself. Like, it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, and it's not something I think I would have noticed without that professor. What were you going to say, Don?
I was going to say, I looked deeper into it or for deeper stuff after talking to you, or after, messaging back and forth, and even the post on Twitter. Because during that scene, there's a menorah on the bookshelf when the Nazi werewolves come in, or Nazi beasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a menorah there, and it is very reminiscent as far as the way that they come in. It's very reminiscent of the way in which a lot of survivors talked about the Nazis would come in, like just came in one day and it's like, we're just tearing all your shit up, get out, without any notice. Because even that scene reminded me of that scene in Schindler's List with the, oh gosh, I forgot what the term was as far as the operation, but when the Nazis were going through the ghettos and basically kicking people out and then walling them into this one neighborhood where they would stay until they would eventually be pushed out. But the violence there was pretty much the same. And then you also question some things as well. If you're going to go in here so heavy-handed, why not that I'm condoning this at all. I want to make that clear. If you're going in there to strike fear into these people and do those things, why don't you just go in and kill them, as opposed to just play around with them, as we see with David's character, where he's being held at knife point while everything else is being shot up, including his family, and then they eventually slit his throat. I'm just like, what is the necessity of that? But then again, you start to throw in that is the added insult, the added terrorism to it, which is there's no making sense of it at all.
Oh, I remember one other thing my professor said. He talked about how when you were Jewish in the 40s in Germany, and this was happening, or any of the territories they overtook, but you could ask for help constantly and no one would help you because they didn't want to get involved. And he compared David constantly trying to get people to listen to him and trying to ask for help to that as well. Again, this isn't my theory. This is what my professor said. I don't know enough about any of this to really overly discuss it, but I think it's an interesting allegory.
Well, and it is because if you look at the film, or if you look at anybody's who's going to be involved in writing or directing it, right, they're going to throw in aspects of their own histories, their own bias, their own background. Because even Steven Spielberg, well before he had ever done Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, said that he didn't realize how much he was putting into the movies that involved like Nazis. So if you go back to his the oh my gosh, Indiana Jones saga, where you see the Nazis in 2 out of 3 of the movies, but they're kind of in the background in Temple of Doom because it's the same time period and all this is taking place. But he was going through it and he's like, I didn't realize how much I was doing, but being Jewish and having people who had gone through the Holocaust, who had gone through the show, I had always heard these stories, and I ended up putting these stories into my films without intentionally putting them there. So I think it's a very good theory to put out there with Landis's background, and especially with writing that story beforehand. I'm sorry, Danger, you were saying something.
No, I'm totally agreeing with you. I think I'm sold on this. When you said that to me, James, I was like, okay, I want to hear this. Like, I don't know. I did not pick up on any of that at all. And I don't, I'm not like a movie genius or anything, but I like to think I can, grab a thread and see what something's about. But now that you say it and kind of explained it, it does seem to be what the allegory might actually be, at least from the filmmaker's point of view.
All right, James, I'm gonna go even further with what you said. So there's that part where David's in the hospital, and again, it doesn't make sense in reality, right? But he's in the hospital, and apparently they've called someone from the State Department to come and check in on him, which again doesn't make sense, because unless you were the victim of, let's say, a terrorist attack, or there's some major crime that had taken place. Not that murder isn't a major crime, but if the local people are like, if the local people basically said, oh, it was this insane person who had done this, and we took care of it, there is nothing else to deal with. From the standpoint of involving anybody from your home country, unless you're having a problem getting home. But the State Department official shows up, and he's completely useless. To make that connection with the Holocaust and the Jewish exile from Exodus from Germany, and then later on the expanding territories that Germany took. You saw how the State Department was useless at that point, where they were asking for help. You had, ships like the St. Louis that had come to the United States and were basically told, no, we're not accepting you. Then they went to the Caribbean, and basically no one was allowed off the ships. And the ship was eventually sent back to Germany, and the vast majority of the people that were on that ship ended up being executed. I mean, as far as victims to the Holocaust. But I would say that's a connection as well, as far as
he's not only like not helpful, he's openly hostile to David while he's in the hospital. I was sitting there like, this guy's like a victim. He was like just woke up from being in an attack, and this guy is yelling at him like it was his own fault, or he's like hiding information from him. And when he's clearly, just coming out of a coma and confused about everything, just was told his friend died. And he's like, oh, your friend's dead. Oh, by the way, it was not a wolf that attacked you. That doesn't make any sense. And he's just like, okay.
Yeah, it's odd. My other issue with it is they sent Jack's body home, right?
Right.
So, like, why didn't they have any plan to send David home when he came out of this? There's no plan. They're just like, well, you're on your own, asshole.
Yeah.
Well, he had to finish backpacking across Europe.
Yeah, this is like, I bought these tickets, and I am not taking a bath on this one.
I have to go see the chicks in Rome that day that Jack was telling me about.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What we're telling you is when your friend wants to go hit up the hot chicks in Italy, you should do that instead of being like, hey, let's walk across the moors.
Look, I wrote in my notes. Let me go ahead and pull the exact quote. This is why James will always be safe traveling with me. because I would not propose stupid shit like, you know what? Let's just backpack across Europe. One, I'm not doing that. And two, I'm not doing that. It will be, James, let's try and get some business class seats on this train, and we're going to go from here to here. Oh, it's October 1st. Yes, I know you don't drink, but you know what? They got pretzels, they've got bratwurst, they've got schnitzel. Like we're gonna do it up, man.
Good Lord.
There will be no backpacking.
Yeah, they like. I was. How did they clean their clothes? You know, when it started raining on them, I'm like, oh come on! Like everything you own is now wet. This is the worst.
Yeah, and I've stayed in a hostel in London. It's not the best of place. I mean, they're nice, but it's one of those things of you don't have the amenities that you would have in a typical hotel or inn. You're probably sharing a room with 10 other people. That includes the bathroom that you're sharing. And there aren't always facilities to wash your clothes. I mean, at least easily accessible. So
it sounds like how we roll at conventions.
Actually, it's more sanitary than at the conventions.
Oh man. But Jack is like my favorite, maybe not my favorite, but one of my favorite things in this film.
Mm-hmm.
And like the progression of how he transforms as well. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the English major in me that was like looking at like, oh, is this David's guilt as it builds? He's decomposing because the body's decomposing, or like, but I thought it was really cool that they didn't just leave him looking one way. Right. Like, I love how he looks the first time you see him. That's probably my favorite look. But then, I mean, after he's dead, the first time you see him. And then, he kind of gets like that greenish hue to him. And then, by the porno theater, things have gotten really weird. I just really wanted to say that line. And I found it fascinating that he keeps changing instead of staying the same.
I didn't realize how much of an impression this left on me as an artist myself until I rewatched it a few days ago for this podcast, because I do that a lot in my books, is have some character have some sort of physical problem that just gets progressively worse and worse. Everything is deteriorating. Their bodies are deteriorating, or their living situation is deteriorating. And I don't mean like, yes, I mean it metaphorically, but I also mean it quite literally. Like someone might have a body. Like I wrote an entire book called I Will Rot Without You. That just literally would be the story from Jack's point of view.
Yeah. Well, even in Moonfellows, there's a guy that has some pretty drastic changes going on, instead of just commanding his people.
And then they don't get better. He doesn't get better. What he wants is for David to die so that he could just disappear into either nothingness or the next life or whatever. It doesn't even matter. But he's not going to get like better. He's just going to escape rotting. It's like,
yeah. No, man, I love, not to just jump all over the place, but even like the porno theater I was just talking about, because I think that's hilarious. I love how all of the victims are sitting in there and how they feel differently about being there. Like you have the vagrants and the escalator guy, I'll call him, like they seem kind of pissed off that they have to be there. Then the nice couple is like hilarious and helpful, which I fucking love that. That's just fucking kills me every time.
You could hang yourself. Well, then you might just suffocate and you might just choke. Yeah, it should be painful. You should be painful. It's like, oh, you could shoot yourself. Yes, get a gun, shoot yourself.
and then Jack goes full best friend. Like, it's okay for me to tell you, hey, you should fucking die so I can get out of this. But as soon as other people are telling him, Jack's like, hey, that's my friend you're talking about. I don't know. I love that whole scene, but I love how they each have personalities and react differently to why they're stuck there.
Especially since you don't get to see much of that because they're all victims from one single rampage. Right. Like we kind of go from person to person. All of a sudden you're like, oh, we're following a stuffy British man coming off of a train in the middle of the night, and that's all we get about him until he gets to talk in this theater and become an actual character.
I did find it funny that his response to hearing some noise is like, I'm going to report this.
Yeah. We're not amused. I think he says along those lines.
It's like, I've been in the London Underground a few times, and I have to tell you that this scene, I had to laugh about because I've gotten off on those stops where you happen to be the only person, and it's like, that's scary enough. Now you all of a sudden hear something, and there's nowhere to go except for the way that you see the station going. As far as like, you've got areas that are cut off, then you have escalators that you need to go up. And depending on the station that you're in, it's a long escalator ride.
Oh, yeah. No, I've had that happen in San Francisco and Philadelphia where somehow I'm the only person or there's one other person. And I don't know, that's just so fucking weird because I look at it and I'm like, how is there no one else here,
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you add my fear because of this film. And every time I was like, what if something's down here,
That's why you got to be the crazy one, man.
Yeah.
You get the other guy. If there's two of you, you got to get him first. Or else it's you.
Look, I would have loved this scene to have been two people. They both see the werewolf. And let's just say it's the businessman who's taking taking the underground. Subway's different thing there. He's taking the underground. He's taking the tube. And he happens to see the werewolf or see the beast, whatever it happens to be. And he pushes the other person out of the way to continue going. Because I think that would definitely get into human nature as far as this whole idea of survival.
Well,
And if it's a stranger, like, it's your life or mine, and it's not going to be me.
It would circle back to the joke in the beginning too.
Exactly.
To remember the Alamo, and you better you sacrifice someone else.
Damn it. How did you make me want this to happen? No, it has to. The Alamo joke.
Hey, maybe they'll do that in the reboot.
There you go. The reboot will just be an American Instagram user trying to plug things in to charge her phone, and the horror is that the plugins are all different. So
How will she shoot TikToks?
All right, I got to ask the question, James, since you mentioned the porn theater several times.
I'm obsessed with See You Next Wednesday. Not just the film, just in general, but also the film. Continue.
Great title, by the way. Have either of you been to one?
No.
Really?
Danger?
I have not. It seems very awkward, to be honest.
I have never been to one. I've been in a store that had that look. And this was like in Paris, like 20 years ago. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I wonder what's in here. And I walked in and I was like, okay, I'm walking back out. Because there wasn't a clear designation as far as like what was being sold there. But I was in a tourist area. But that's what, which I also found funny, that was in the Piccadilly Circus area. And that's not too far off from what Times Square used to be like in New York. You had all those theaters that you would go to, and the one institution that was able to clean it up of all institutions was Disney, because Disney made it clear, we're not putting any stores here unless you, New York City, do something about all the quote unquote smut. You get rid of that, you'll get a Disney store.
Wow.
So the mouse has a lot of power.
Did we need a Disney store that bad? Keep some of it.
Not my porn. Oh, I can buy a Lion King doll. How exciting.
I like how it's the only place he could transform that nobody would turn around and think that the noises he was making were strange.
That was something I had down as well. It's like, plus, you're not going to turn around and say, oh my God, is that Paul Rubens? 10 years off from the joke. But yeah, you're not going to turn around because even in the movie The Departed, I'm assuming both of you saw it, but there's a great scene where Jack Nicholson's character sets up a meeting with Matt Damon's character at a porn theater, right? And the whole premise behind it is no one's going to come in here to listen to what somebody else is doing. Everybody's coming in here to not make eye contact with anybody, to not talk to anybody else, Like, this is a place where if you want privacy, you're going to, as strange as it is, you're going to get it. But it's preceded by this great raunchy joke by Jack Nicholson's character where he's groaning and grunting, and Matt Damon's character is getting pissed off because, it sounds like somebody's masturbating right next to him. And I think he threw like some yogurt on him or something on his shoe. And he gets all pissed off. And then he goes into explaining, like, no one turned around to look at him when he was grunting and making those noises and threw the yogurt at him. And he had to explain, like, this is the place where you go to not have people looking at you. It's the perfect place. And it's definitely the perfect place for a transformation, because he could have easily transformed on the street and it would have had the same effect. Like, it would have had the idea of spectacle of people coming up and looking at him. But I think the idea of no one looking at him while he's changing, no one is giving him the attention to follow up on what James was saying about the metaphor and the allegory. The idea that he's going through this, no one sees him. In fact, no one ever sees him change.
Oh, wow. Huh. I hadn't thought about that. I read a theory online that people think that, well, not lots of people, but some people, everyone's saying so. But they're saying, like, maybe he doesn't change at all. Maybe it's all in his head. And I don't agree with this, but when you say that no one sees him change, I can kind of see how they got there, which was the only
well, no. I just mean as far as ignoring the trauma that he's going through, right? Yeah. I think it is possible, you can have that theory that since no one sees him change and he's having this breakdown where he's convinced, like, maybe it is in my head. Maybe I am imagining all this other stuff. Because he's virtually alone both times that we see him transform. Once in the apartment and then in the theater where there are other people, but they're not paying attention to him. He's in the back row of the theater. So the only time that, people see the wolf, they see the monster, but they see him, or at least we see him as a human, after the police officers, who must be outstanding shots to completely miss the nurse, to completely miss Alex, as they're shooting at this wolf man that is at the back end of a dead end alley.
And they hit him so nicely. Nobody, like, he fell so well to hide his penis from the camera. I was really impressed with their shooting. All
right, James, I'm going to really mess with you now. That's a weird transition, weird segue, but I'm going to mess with you now. Was it me, or did he kind of fall like La Pieta? The Mary holding the Jesus statue?
Oh, I would have never made that connection. I don't know.
I'm only making the connection because I had a film studies professor who had pointed out all these movies where they do that. Whether it's one person holding another, like the Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier movie, the Defiant Ones, they have that similar moment at the end of the movie where Sidney Poitier's character is holding Tony Curtis at the end of the film in that same manner. And then they get into the sexuality and sexual tension between these two characters and whether or not there may have been some feeling between each other. And several other films where they've done kind of the same thing. And I just felt like he's laying in that same Jesus position, even though he's laying on a bunch of trash, but he's laying in that same Jesus position, whereas though he's been sacrificed.
Yeah. I mean, self-sacrificed like Jesus. Well, I don't know if he self-sacrificed. See, that's kind of the push of the whole movie, right? He's telling him, you have to kill yourself. You have to kill yourself. It's the only way to protect everybody and to set us all free. But I don't know if he ever really does. He transforms and then kind of very abruptly gets shot. I know this is like one of those really, like, it's got a famous abrupt ending, this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But, like, I don't know if he ever really has a resolution to his character arc. Like, I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Does he kind of go somewhere? Does he have a full character arc or what? Does he do that on purpose?
Well, it's so weird because there's all this talk of killing yourself, and then there's all this talk of how a werewolf can only be killed by someone that he loves. And like she's there and he kind of has death by cop, going on, but I don't know if that's a chosen.
He doesn't attack her. She comes and she says something to him, and he doesn't attack her and lets the cops shoot him instead, I guess is kind of what that is saying.
Yeah, I don't know. But I kind of like the abrupt ending because of that, because I don't need to know if he chose. Like, I get what you're saying about the character arc, but I don't know. I think this works so much better than If I Knew for Sure. Because I don't understand anything that happened in this film. I don't understand transformations and werewolves and all this shit, and it just kind of works for me as it is. It's just like that was his story and it ends where he ends. And I don't know.
Well, I don't think you need resolution either, because with that ambiguity, you actually have a lot of opening to question what was going on.
Right. Well, especially now that you've kind of introduced this idea that maybe it wasn't a transformation at all, or the transformation was more metaphorical. Instead of him literally becoming a wolf, he was just kind of becoming mad and going on a rampage, possibly.
So the only reason that I don't buy that is if the opening scene of Jack being killed, I guess that's not the opening, but when Jack gets killed, if we didn't see the wolf there, I think I would be more open to it being possibly all in his head, right? Like he just believes he's the wolf so much or whatever. But because we see the wolf, I'm like, and then we see the naked man laying there who clearly wasn't there before that. I can't buy it. Unless they were just that distracted that they didn't see the naked man there. That's happened to me many times.
Look, it could be like eyewitness testimony. You thought that you saw something, right? And we're talking about Jack waking up. We're talking about David waking up from a coma from being attacked like 3 weeks later. It's possible that it's in his head. I'm not of that opinion. I'm of the opinion that there was a werewolf, and the werewolf passed it on to him. But I think there is an opening to make that argument as far as for the individual to question, did any of this shit actually happen?
Yeah.
I mean, like they could both be true in a way. Like, right. Not like there's the literal story that we're watching unfold and the rules of werewolf movies, which they even bring up other werewolf movies to kind of explain what's going on. But then there's also, the allegorical or metaphorical change of what he's going through. So, they both kind of work. They're both valid reads, I think. And I love when a story can do that, too. Can mean something literally and also, metaphorically.
Absolutely.
And I love the whole end scene of this movie, that car crash scene. It's, it's what Landis does. They had it in Animal House and Blues Brothers. But those are played for comedic effect. This is actually horrific. People are flying out of windows and getting bloodied and run over. And it's like, it's almost funny that it happens at a porn after coming out of a porn theater, because it's almost this orgasmic release of all this kind of buildup of the tension throughout the entire movie in this just overflowing scene of chaos, which ends the second that scene ends. The movie ends, as an orgasm. The second you're done having it, you're like, cool, sex is done. Gonna go watch television now.
That was what I found, not necessarily the sexual aspect or the comparison there, but the spectacle of what was taking place, right? So Piccadilly Circus is a pretty busy area. Pretty much any time of the year, it's pretty busy, or any time of the day for that matter. But for there to be this theater where it's a handful of people, no pun intended, it's a handful of people that are in the theater. And when this transformation takes place, he attacks a couple people in the theater, attacks the usher, and then they shut the gates because the Bobby sees he's like, oh, there's a beast in there, and then shuts the gates and then calls a couple other people to help him out, and actually makes a call saying, hey, call this in. We need some people with rifles, which then, as an American watching this, you are then quickly reminded that regular beat cops in other countries, especially in England, don't carry guns on them. And they have to figure out ways to solve problems without guns. Now, ultimately, they have to use guns to solve this problem. But, they pull the door down. They hold it there as long as they can. But what was remarkable is, as the Bobbies are saying, like, get back, there's a wild beast in there, get back, all these people start crowding around like, I want to see. I need to see this. After you haven't been seeing him this entire time, now you want to see him. You want to see this, whatever this is that other people are saying is happening. I want to see it. And once he bursts out, that's when all this chaos ensues. And the mass hysteria. And I wrote this down in my notes, and I know I did it with a little bit of cheekiness. I call this scene the orgy of violence.
Nice.
Because you go from the massacre in the theater, then you have all these, the casualties from the cars and the bus and all the other stuff that's going on, ultimately to the shooting. Yeah. So you got several different types of violence that take place there.
And like you were just saying, that they don't carry guns in these other countries. They need an American solution for an American problem that they have. There's an American running amok, and we need guns to stop him because it's the only thing these people understand.
I love it.
I wonder if the Wolfman would have played fetch, though.
That's all they had to do. Who's a good boy? No one told him he was a good boy.
The nurse should have definitely done that. Yeah. Right after that cunnilingus scene, that would have been a good time to say it.
I wonder where he ranked in the 7. I guess 8 at this point.
Started scratching his ear with his hind leg.
His little red rocket.
Wow. I've been trying to avoid it the entire time.
It just came out. I didn't want to.
That's normally what happens with the red rocket. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, man. Jesus. I just feel bad for her because isn't this another one-night stand? This poor lady.
Well, she got 2 nights out of it.
She should have given in the morning after the transformation. Oh, man.
I can just imagine, like, the next guy that she takes home is like, all right, I've been with 8 people. 3 of them were one-night stands. 1 was a dog.
Oh, my God.
Like, what do you mean? Remember that guy that was shot in the alley and there was a beast running around? That was him. Of course, that guy will be like, well, how was he in bed, though?
Is he better than me?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they made this today, how many doggy style jokes there would be, or like he would transform while he's going down on her or something?
I bet we're about to find out because apparently there's a remake coming.
Well, I guess that brings us to the part of the show where we do movie recommendations. So Danger, you're the guest. You get to go first. What should people watch if they liked this film?
I'm going to suggest they watch a movie called The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which came out a few years ago. Another werewolf movie.
Slightly different.
Slightly different, yeah. But super interesting. It was made by a filmmaker called Jim Cummings, who does a lot of these really kind of unhinged characters, like repressed anger kind of people. And it's also Robert Forster's last movie. So
that's right.
And he's really great in it too. So it's just a really interesting, different take on the werewolf story.
That scene where he gets kicked out of the meeting, I don't want to say too much about it, but I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes out of like the last decade of films I've watched. I've gone back and watched just that scene so many times, and I just walk around going, damn it, Randy. You know,
if you haven't seen Thunder Road, which is the movie he made right before Wolf of Snow Hollow, he has a scene. It opens with it's almost a 10-minute scene of him at his mom's wake, just kind of having a breakdown while trying to give a eulogy, but in this like most embarrassing, cringy, over the top, like naked grief. It's just an incredible performance. And
what is this called?
It's called Thunder Road.
I'm on it.
Yeah, and it's very much like that scene from
hell yes
at the AA meeting.
Beautiful. Yeah, so normally I do a double feature. I actually considered Wolf of Snow Hollow, and I'm glad I changed because otherwise this would be a very weird movie recommendation day. I'm going with Trick or Treat because I was thinking about my favorite transformations. Trick or Treat, also my favorite Halloween movie ever. But yeah, the transformations scene is fantastic. Also, check out our episodes on Trick or Treat and Wolf of Snow Hollow. You're up. What do you got for us today? 13?
All 8 billion.
35?
Oh, I think this might be the most, and I really was not planning on having this many on the list. And the two of you have not taken any of mine.
Should I count down to how soon Michael J. Fox will be mentioned? Let's go.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go first. Teen Wolf. That's one that's out. Danger mentioned The Howling earlier, and I had that one. Silver Bullet, Werewolves Within, anything Monty Python, American Werewolf in Paris, The Fly, Monster Squad, Return of the Living Dead, I Spit on Your Grave, Bram Stoker's Dracula, The Stuff, The Thing, Cujo, The Hand, Return of the Living Dead, House, Werewolves of the Third Reich, because you got to have those Nazi werewolves, Becky, Eurotrip. I'm going to save this one for last. Damn. Transylvania 6-5000, Twilight Zone the movie, the Kentucky Fried Movie, and last but not least, The Great Muppet Caper.
Nice. So, I really thought it was going to be Twilight. I did.
You know what? No.
And
no. Never seen the movies, never will see them.
I like how you mentioned like 6 films that we did episodes on, and it went so fast I couldn't even say it. But, you know.
Hey.
Just listen to all of our episodes, and it'll save me time doing this.
Yes, listen to our episodes on The Thing, Return of the Living Dead, Monster Squad, The Fly, Silver Bullet, Werewolves Within, Becky, and House.
Oh, yeah.
And I think those are the only ones, because a couple of these on the list
check out The Fly. Definitely check out The Fly, because I remember the guest. He was Danger Slater. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Danger. Yeah, go ahead.
Nothing. I was just echoing you.
Oh, okay. Check them all out, damn it.
Yeah.
No, I guess you just come on here to do transformations. You got Society, you got The Fly, you got this.
I honestly realized that. I didn't say it during this entire conversation. I realized not only do I have only picked movies where people are transforming, they're also all from the 80s. So I'm like, I need to. If and when I come on this show again, I'm going to pick something newer.
Sweet.
That is not an if. It's a win. It's a win.
There we go.
All right, man. That brings it back to you. Where can people buy your books and follow you online and all that good stuff?
You can buy my books. All of them would be available where books are sold online, specifically like Amazon and a bunch of other places. I suggest you use other places, bookshop.org. But if you want Moonfellows, you can get that directly from the publisher by going to moonfax.org, which is a URL we bought just to sell this book through. And if you want to follow me online, Twitter's the place, Danger_Slater, or you can do Instagram, Danger Slater.
All right, that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we will see you next Monday here at thenecronoma.com.